Okay. Okay, so today is Tuesday, March 15th, and we're here tonight to learn about our community, and especially people in our community that might not have all the resources that many of us are fortunate to have. We have guests here tonight from Hope Homeless Outreach, providing encouragement. We have guests from the Boulder Homeless Shelter. We have guests from the R Center. We have guests from the Agape Safe Haven House. We also have Pamela Nystrom, who is our boots on the ground distributor of the warm things that we gathered for the Marshall Fire victims. So each of our guests has the opportunity to talk about their mission, their services, how we can help, and also you guys have the opportunity to ask questions either in the chat, we'll be watching the chat, or if you want, you can raise your hand and ask the question directly using the reaction button at the bottom. I'm really fortunate tonight. I'm co-hosting this with my friend Tamar, who's on the other computer. Tamar, do you want to talk a little bit about your interest in this?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Tamar Hendricks. I own Crackpots. We're on the corner of 5th and Main, so just kitty corner from the yarn shop. So we're happy to be here with our neighbors. Yeah, we just thank you for having us. And we're celebrating 20 years, and 19 of those years we've been collaborating with the Our Center on the Empty Bowls project, their fundraiser. So that right now we're in the midst of that, and always looking for other ways to get involved in the community. So this will be very interesting.
Yeah. And I don't think I introduced myself, but I recognize most of the faces. I'm Gail. I own Longmont Yarn Shop. We're happy to be celebrating 10 years in September. And before we even opened, there were a group of local makers that wanted to make a difference in the community, and they started making warm things and bringing them in for us to donate. And lately we've been doing thermal socks to donate. So we have a very generous community, and I'm proud to be affiliated with this bunch of people. So we're going to start our presentation tonight hearing from Andy of Hope. And Andy, I'm going to go ahead and spotlight you for everyone, and let's.
Oh, great.
You've got great stories to share. I wish I could give you hours to pass along your message.
Well, I will try to keep this to about 10 minutes. I should be able to do that, so I'll summarize a few things. My name is Andy Schwartz. I work for Hope as our volunteer manager, as well as our outreach manager. I've been with Hope for coming up on 4 years at the end of spring. It's been a great ride for 4 years. Hope has been here in Longmont since 2007. It started with, I believe, 7 people working just to sort of make sure people that were sleeping outside in the cold had the right gear to do that, so nobody would freeze to death. Right now, we've really expanded over that period of time, and I'll kind of skip through the whole timeline of things because that could take a while. Right now, we really, I think, run 3 main programs. The first one is our outreach and warehouse, where people can come to get supplies that they need. We cover, we give out food there. We give out hats, gloves, coats, blankets, sleeping bags, pretty much anything anybody would need. The only thing we don't give out is tents for various reasons, but it's something that we do shy away from. Every once in a while, we may get one that comes through our door and we'll sneak it out to somebody, but we don't really have a tent program. But everything else is fair game, and we give out a lot. Just kind of to give one number, our most popular item, in 2021, we gave out over 1,500 pairs of socks to folks coming through Longmont, which it's a lot of socks. The other thing we do outside of street outreach, you know, I'm out in the streets at least twice a week. We have volunteers that go out a few times a week, trying to connect people to services, make sure they have supplies. By connecting with the services, we're connected to the county program called HSBC and coordinated entry. So we want people to connect with those. Those services lead to a few things, but the main ones are sheltering and housing. You know, the ultimate goal for us is really to get everybody housed. Last year, I believe we had just over 50 people housed here in Longmont, which is a solid number. I'd like that to be a little higher, but we're pretty proud of getting 50 people off the streets. At our main shelter, what we call our navigation shelter, on any given night, we'll shelter roughly 20 to 30 people. When the weather's nasty, like it's been every Wednesday for the last 6 weeks, we will see 50 plus people come through our doors. Our doors are open every night from 5:30 to 7 for anybody to come in and get a hot meal, a shower, a respite from the cold. When it has been really cold, we stay open as a day shelter. Lately, we've been open 24 hours during the past few weeks. During these snowstorms and cold snaps, we've been open 3 to 4 days consecutively. So we had some very tired staff at the end of all that. Our other sheltering program is a program we started about 2 years ago called Safe Lot. And that's a short-term program for people to transition from living in their vehicles into housing. We have case management there. We provide meals there as well, and access to showers, case management, and tools that people would need to move forward. Last year, we were able to get 35 cars of people. Typically, it's one person in a car. Every once in a while, it's two, out of their cars and into housing. We really provide them with the tools. A lot of times, it's just people can't catch up. They can't save the money for the down payment for the security deposit, first and last. So by not paying rent for a few months, or paying for hotel rooms and having food provided, they're able to save that money up and move forward. So I love that program. For that, just to give an idea of how many people we help in a year. Last year, we fed over 26,000 dinners here in Longmont.
Wow.
So that's a large number, and we do that through our volunteer program. I saw one of our volunteers on here, and I won't call her out by name, so we do that. We have volunteers every night that cook a meal for 10 people and deliver that to our meal sites. We shoot for, this time of year, we're shooting for 6 to 8 volunteers every night to help contribute food. We ask them to make a meal for 10 people. And through that, 26,000 meals, that's a staggering number for me when I really look at it at the end of the year. It just, and we do have some other volunteer programs. So our mission is to house people. The way that this group can help, we do right now. We have a pretty large selection of hats. But it's weird. Things change. It used to be people never wanted scarves or vests, and this year things have shifted. People are really liking scarves, and they really like having vests. So as I thought about scarves, they do like dark colors. The bright colors make them stand out more, and it's really people are trying to blend in. Every once in a while, we get a female client that really likes something fashionable, and that's always nice when we can provide that. And I was thinking about scarves. It's something I usually don't think about. Something a little wide with pockets would be really helpful for folks, like a little pocket on the bottom. And with everything else, dark colors and tight weaves really work best. When it's a loose weave, we find wind kind of goes through them. It doesn't really stop the weather elements. I could keep going on and on, or
yeah. Well, I don't think we're necessarily going to cut you off, but we do have a question. Carol asks, what are the biggest barriers to housing in your perception? Or
outside of not enough housing units available, which is a huge one. So if we look at it from the client perspective, the biggest barriers there are really mental health, which leads to substance abuse. Like mental health, I always say mental health, but we could really use more beyond affordable housing units that people can get vouchers for, because a lot of our folks are at the moment don't have the ability to make a large income, especially it's really needed in Longmont at this point, throughout Boulder County. I don't think there's really a lot of very affordable housing. Even when they deem it affordable, it's still pretty high.
Yeah. It's an expensive place to live, and it's getting more expensive. So
yeah, I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Okay. Well, those are great hints for our makers to know about what kinds of fabric to shoot for when they're making, and colors that are preferred. Anything else that you'd want to share as far as like other needs that you like? If you could snap your fingers and get more people helping with something, what would it be?
Yeah, actually, I do need more soup angels. So I see, what size throws could you use? For throws, I would say something that would cover an adult, let's call it a 6'2" adult. It's something they could use while they're sleeping. At our shelters, we use mats and blankets there. So I guess that would be 3 feet across by 6 feet long.
Okay. That's
those would be great. And those could be any color. I have noticed we have some Broncos fans. If somebody is really want to take on a challenge, and put a Broncos logo on a blanket.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, if anybody would like to volunteer, I can put my email address here. That's in the chat. If anybody would like to reach out, I'd be happy to share a lot more information on that. Really, what we ask for as a whole is for people to commit. We have 2 programs there. One, you can commit for 1 day per month, cook a meal for 10. And we look at our calendar as today is the second Monday. So this way, if you always have something going on a Tuesday, the date, the 14th, will rotate from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday to Thursday. But by doing it the second Monday, you're always on the same day of the month instead of the same date.
Okay. Makes it good for planning and working around the schedule.
We also have a substitute program that people can be on a mailing list. We send out a mailing typically once or twice a month for people to fill in where we have gaps. And that just gives a lot more flexibility.
Good. That's great. Well, Andy, are you going to be able to stay on, or if you need to slip out, totally understand. Okay.
I can stay on.
If questions come up for Andy during the progress of this presentation, you're welcome to put them in the chat for him. I appreciate
your. I may turn off the video, but I'll still be here.
Okay. Great. Thank you. All right. I'm going to take Andy off the hot seat, and I'm going to find Tiffany Stamas with the Boulder homeless shelter. And I know she's here. Tiffany, it's great to see you. Last year, you were so generous to be at our presentation, and you were in a car, as I recollect.
Yes, I was. I'm glad to be in a stable spot this year.
Well, we appreciate you showing up every time for us, so thank you. So if you could share a bit with our participants about your organization, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, thanks for having me back and having the shelter back. I am the Chief Development Officer for the Boulder Shelter for the Homeless, and could echo so many of the things that Andy just shared. So I appreciate him covering a lot of bases as we start to share the word about the value of housing as a focus. So the shelter is in its 40th year this year. So we are in December, we will be celebrating our 40th anniversary. And from the first day until today, we have seen many shifts in need in our community, and also many shifts in demand. We started as an organization that was grassroots, and like Andy was saying, you start with a few people who are trying to meet the needs of a relatively small number of people in the community. And as time has progressed, the affordability of our county has really far exceeded the income stream in our county. And so it is an increasingly difficult thing for individuals and families to sustain housing, even in a market that they previously may have been able to. So many people find themselves just literally a paycheck away or a medical incident away from experiencing homelessness. And so the stereotypical image of someone who is experiencing homelessness has always sort of been that mental health is the driving force, or substance abuse is the driving force, or that this is my least favorite term, but that they're lazy, that they're, pick themselves up by their bootstraps kind of thing, and they don't have to be homeless. And both in our community and across the country, those things just are no longer really an accurate depiction. There are so many factors that contribute to someone experiencing homelessness that if it isn't viewed as an individualized need and therefore an individualized solution, then it's really difficult to address the issue. And yet we are, as a community and as service providers, we are also experiencing the downstream effect of our upstream circumstances, where there is inadequate access to mental health care, which can leave people untreated for their mental health conditions, and then experiencing some self-medication, which can lead to addiction, which can lead to job loss, which can lead to homelessness. Like there's so many factors that come into play. And the need in our community is just so big. And so I really think I would just put that out there, that if nothing else, I hope that what you're all able to take away from hearing from each of these amazing agencies in our community, that we are honestly so blessed to be so rich in resources in Boulder County, in terms of dedicated support for individuals experiencing homelessness, as well as at risk of experiencing homelessness. But what I really hope we can all take away is that it's our neighbors. These are our community members. These are not an other category. These are people, and they're people that we know. They're people that we have cause to care about and want to see supported in our community. So that's a very long-winded way to get around to what it is we actually do. So I'll go back to just the basics. The mission of the shelter is to create avenues to stable housing for our community's homeless adults from a foundation of supportive and safe shelter. And while our name is the Boulder Shelter for the Homeless, I do want to highlight that we are an organization that serves Boulder County. And so we do house clients. We have outreach for clients that are all Longmont based, and we have put forth an application for a pretty significant building in terms of size to potentially be added to the resources that would be available in Boulder for housing clients. And the big reason for that is that if any of you are Long Monsters yourself, you know that there's a connection to this community, or if you're not from Longmont, there's a connection to your community. And so to ask a client who is Longmont based to reposition themselves into Boulder, despite the fact that it's just, a half a dozen miles down the road, is really difficult, especially if you don't have access to a vehicle, or you have unreliable access to a vehicle. And so we are Boulder based, but we are not Boulder specific in our reach. We do the breadth of services from outreach through permanent supportive housing, and we try to do our best to meet clients where they are. And we mean that from the literal physical location where they are. Somebody does not have to come through the shelter doors in order for us to support them in their transition into housing, but also from the more psychosocial, emotional standpoint, that if we can meet you where you are in your place of existence, and your readiness to be housed, then we can best support you in not only the literal steps it takes to acquire housing, but in maintaining and sustaining your housing once you're there. And so we really do prioritize housing exits, and the question of what are those barriers to housing is a good one there. And the answers are many. And Andy definitely touched on a really critical one, and that is that mental health and substance abuse that can correlate with mental health can really be a pretty significant barrier for an individual, not only to access housing, but to have the capacity to do the basic thing like get an ID so that you can start the process, because no one's going to sign a lease with you if you don't even have an ID. And many of the clients that we serve don't have IDs, don't have a social security card, and may not know their number, and may be eligible for those governmental benefits, but may not. I can tell you there's a lot involved in trying to become eligible, even if you are fully eligible for something like Social Security or disability benefits. It's not an easy process, particularly if you don't have a stable address and you don't have support along the way, and you are facing medical or mental health crises, and you have the instability and the stress of not knowing where you're going to sleep tonight, and so there's just a lot that goes on behind the scene that makes it so that question of what is it? It is the literal structure, it is the voucher, it is the support, it is the personal barriers, it is the feeling of losing community, it is so many things that can be a barrier to someone transitioning successfully into housing. And so when I think about that, I think it's miraculous that the number of people that our county transitions into housing every year is where it is. So Andy has every right to be excited when he can say 50 plus people have been moved into housing through Hope in a year. This past year, we housed 105 clients, and we were excited about that because it was actually our third successive year of triple digits. And that is huge in this community, because housing over 100 people in Boulder County, given all of the barriers that I have just spoken of and more, is really incredible. And so the work that goes on behind the scenes is tremendous, and none of it is possible without community support. And that community support comes in quite literally those warm things that provide dignity and provide a feeling of hope and encouragement for a client that receives them, because they feel seen, they feel a part of the community, they feel that someone cared, and they know somebody cares when somebody brings a pair of store-bought gloves to the shelter as well. But when they know somebody invested time to make something, it really does resonate for a lot of people. I would second what Andy also did say about dark colors, and oh my gosh, the suggestion of the wider scarf with pockets. I was like, oh yes, because it's true. There's so much functionality in that. And if what you have is layer upon layer, but what your layers really are flannels and then hoodies and what have you, you end up at this loss of real pockets, and you end up with some gaps in your comfort. And when nothing else is available as a pillow, you know what makes a pretty good one is a nice, wide, soft scarf. So I think it's a really valuable contribution, and I would agree with them. It may be a fashion thing. I don't know what this year has been, but I would say historically we haven't had a great demand for scarves, and we also have seen that increase this year. So I haven't noticed there being a tremendous fashion trend around scarves when I walk around the community, but there seems to be among the people experiencing homelessness. So those are really valuable. I don't know that the question about throws was thrown out there for all of us to answer, but I would say when I think about most valuable size, I actually do think something that's kind of close to twin size, which is not far off probably from what Andy suggested. So bigger than a typical throw, but big enough to make it so that it can not just rest over, but sort of get tucked under a 6 foot tall individual. Yeah, and then in terms of how else support can be provided, we are truly just now getting to the point where, as an organization, we are ready to reopen our doors to volunteers coming in to the shelter. And we are looking to rebuild a lot of our volunteer core, because we've had 2 years of minimal, I would say at best is a term I could use, at times nothing. We fully suspended volunteers in the building for a good part of COVID, because when you serve up to 160 people a night, if you can, and they're not the same people from one night to the next night, if you can mitigate the number of different people coming through the doors in the heart of COVID, we definitely felt the one way we could mitigate that risk was to reduce the number of other people who came into the building. So we didn't want to reduce the number of people we were serving. We wanted to keep that as high as we could. And truly just this week have been granted permission to go back to our full capacity of 160. And it's going to take us a little bit of logistical work to get back there. We're currently at 145 people per night, and we shelter 25 people in an area hotel every night during the winter season, so that we could exceed our historic capacity of 160. So I'm not sure if I've touched on all that you might want to know, but I feel like I have also have the capacity to just speak for much longer than you all may want to hear me. So I'm happy to pass it on to someone else.
Well, I'm wondering, if someone were to want to get involved, what kind of things would they do to volunteer? Like what kind of volunteers are you looking for as you grow your team of volunteers?
It's a very important question. Thank you. We are looking for 2 primary things. One is that we have an area that's referred to as dorm supply, and it's where every client who comes into the building comes to access basic toiletries and over-the-counter medications and their blankets and their towels and that kind of thing. And that's an area that's a very individual service-based thing. So we only have 1 volunteer back there at a time. There is a staff member present. And because the world of COVID has taught us that we should always share what makes this safe, it is an area that is now closed off by plexiglass, and things are passed through rather than the same level of personal interaction that we previously had, in the sense of it just being a wide open space. And then the other area that we're looking for support will be in our meal service, and we offer both breakfast and dinner. I will say breakfast is for the early birds. Our breakfast meal volunteer service is from 5:30 to 7:30 in the morning. And that is partially because of our hours for clients, but also because historically a lot of people would do that service before they were heading to work. And so it did not interfere with people then being able to continue on with their day. And then our dinner service is nightly between 5 and 8. And that can be done individually. And we will also be looking to bring organized groups back in, groups of folks who would come in, used to come in once a month. And so it might be, I mean, I'm going to use Longmont Yarn Shop just as the collective group. It could be that Gail, and her tremendously abundant time that I'm sure she does not have, was every month coordinating a group of 5 volunteers to come into the shelter. And they wouldn't have to be the same 5 people, but members of the greater Longmont Yarn Shop community could be signing up through Gail, coming in once a month. And it could be the same 5 people from one month to the next, but it doesn't have to be. So there are both individual and group opportunities that will be coming back on board.
Great.
It's nice to be able to start feeling like we can interact interact as a community in so many ways in this last couple of weeks compared to actually 2 years ago when it all changed.
It's true.
So, yeah. Well, thank you. I'm looking in the chat to see if there's any questions for you specifically. I don't think I see anything. Any questions in our community for Pam? Tiffany. Pam's our next guest. All right. Tiffany, thank you for your labor of love. Those people that you serve are lucky to have you in their corner.
Thank you.
I'm writing many days every day. So
we appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. The next person we're going to hear from is Pamela Nystrom. And Pamela is one of our Longmont Yarn Shop community members. She's a spinner and a knitter and a nurse, and she works at a Vista hospital and was here taking classes. And she said, you know, if you guys wanted to like make some things that I could share with the people in my community that have lost everything. And so that's all it took to get Longmont Yarn Shop's community behind her. So let's hear your story, Pam, of helping the Marshall fire victims.
Okay. Well, I thank you, Gail, for having me and inviting me, and for, you know, I laugh, you called me the boots on the ground, but she was the cyber in the sky. You know, she made it all happen and just fed it to me. But she asked to sort of share our missions. And I thought about that. What was my mission when I started this? You know, I was thinking scarves and hats, right? Well, it was really so much more than that. It was, and I borrowed it a little bit from the hospital I work at, which is a Vista and right in the middle of the burn area. Was just to extend the healing ministry of community from one community to another. And I think the drive that we did more than that. So I got a lot of questions, which I didn't even know were out there. I took a Ravelry 101 class, and I found out that somebody had put a call out on Ravelry, which is a knitter's sort of website, and it went all over the country. And I got donations through Longmont Yarn Shop from Michigan, Ohio, Washington State. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And I'm like, where are these all coming from? Well, apparently they were also asking, what's her plan? How is she going to get this to people? And as more and more stuff came into my house, and it covered every surface of my house for 2 months. We did at every table. I borrowed 4 tables from neighbors and had everything covered. I said to myself, how am I going to get this to people? And I didn't really know, but I did know that love would find a way, and it certainly did. So working at a Vista, which was right in the middle of the burn area, and a lot of my coworkers were busy evacuating the day of the fire, and they were watching out of the window their own homes burn down. And so I had a base, and I started there and started going to every distribution center and to the Marshall Free Store. And I'm not on Facebook, so I put up old-fashioned flyers everywhere saying, contact me if you're a knitter and you lost your stash, if you need some warm things. And shortly after that, just calls started rolling in, emails started rolling in. And so I went to distribution centers. I went to disaster relief assistance centers. I put up the old-fashioned posters. And then as I would hear about meetings on the news, you know, they were having a meeting at the Superior Community Center or at the YMCA, I would take things in my car, big buckets, and I would go to those meetings. And pretty soon, those people were taking things, can I take some extra back to the hotel where a bunch of people are staying? So they just started serving their own communities wherever they were living, and it just sort of spread that way. And it was beautiful. So eventually people found me, and they took things back, and that was that. And now I can say in the last week or two, I just got rid of the last little bits of donations, and they were little stuffed animals. and a brother and sister of 4 and 5 came and took those along with some little hats. I had a lot of scarves that distribution centers did not want. So I passed those on to Longmont Yarn Shop for this drive. So you guys will be getting a lot of those scarves, which is great. See, love finds its way. So I think the best story though that I have, and I wish I do have a bunch of pictures. And if you guys look in days to come at the Facebook, Melanie is going to help me put little pictures with snippets of some stories that I can share with you. I don't know if you can see this picture. It's kind of blurry, but you can sort of see it. So that's one of my favorite stories. That is a little boy, and he's 4, and he has an 8-year-old sister. I was at Marshall Fire Free Store one day, and I met their mom, and she was in tears because they didn't have enough insurance to rebuild their house. And she said, but the saddest thing is that my grandmother was a knitter, and we lost absolutely everything that she ever made us and our children. And I said, well, what's her favorite colors? And she said, blue and purple. So I went out to my car, and just that day I had gotten a bunch of hats and some blankets, blue and purple. And I was able to take them back into her and share them with her for her children. And she sent me those pictures of her kids later and was so grateful. And so, I mean, I could go on also with stories after stories. And I feel like I was the one that got the blessing. Yale and Longmont Yarn Shop did all that work, and I was just the messenger. And it was a beautiful, beautiful, but exhausting experience. But it was nice. And so I want to share to close something that our CEO at our hospital shared with us when we reopened the hospital. And it was really the whole message of this drive for me, was that community is not defined or limited to geographics. Community is the places that we go to learn, to laugh, to share, to heal, and to recover. So I think each one of the people I've been hearing from today understand that definition of community, and we're all committed to it. And thank you.
Yeah, you're truly an angel going down there and supporting families. You have so many stories that you've shared with us, but thank you for being there. I can't imagine losing my house and trying to rebuild, losing family, pets. It's huge.
Yeah, it's homelessness in a different way. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And, you know, but it's painful both ways. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Pam about her experience or her thoughts about her experience? It's pretty darn amazing. So thank you, Pam. I'm going to take you off the hot seat. All right. Our next guests are from the R Center here in Longmont. And I'm thrilled that we have couple people here. I'm gonna spotlight Marc, and I'm gonna spotlight Carly. Carly is one of our longtime community members here at Longmont Yarn Shop as a fiber aficionado, and Marc is the director of the R Center. And together, I'm looking forward to hearing from them and to share what they do and how we can help.
Sure, thank you. And my apologies for being here a little bit late. I knew I was going to be cutting it really close from a personal commitment to get here. And unfortunately, that commitment lasted a little longer than expected. So I apologize, but I'm glad I was able to make it in the end. And actually, you probably would have got a better presentation if I would never have came and Carly did it all, because she'd do a phenomenal job. So maybe I can talk a little bit about the overview of what the R Center does. And Carly, if it works for you, maybe you can share some of the work that you've been doing, because Carly works directly with the community, and she sees on a daily basis, you know, what the struggles are and how the R Center is helping to keep people housed and hopefully doing our best to prevent people from going from being housed to unhoused in our community. For those of you who may not be aware, the Our Center, we're a family resource center. We've been around since 1987. Back in the late 80s, the faith-based community was doing a lot of this work throughout Longmont. And they had the incredible foresight to realize that they were all doing this work and they were doing it in silos. And a lot of times families or individuals were bouncing from church to church to try to find the assistance that they needed. And the faith-based leaders came together and said, you know what we really need to do is we need to bring this all under one roof, where it's kind of a one-stop shop. People can come and get all the services they need under one roof. And the Our Center was born. Through a lot of iterations throughout the decades, we were designated a family resource center. We're one of 3 in Boulder County. We serve the St. Vrain Valley School District area. That also includes the mountain communities of Lyons, Riverside, Raymond, and Allens Park. And for the most part, the most general definition of a family resource center is we provide resource and referrals. So a family or an individual may come to us and they may be struggling. It could be an unforeseen circumstance, whether it's a loss of a job, an accident, a divorce, a pandemic. Something that you're just not prepared to have happen. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, a lot of households right now, because of the cost of living and wages, can't build up a really robust savings. So when one of these crises happens, it doesn't take but maybe a couple days to maybe a month or two when all of a sudden a household is finding themselves upside down. They're having to make very difficult decisions between, you know, do we skip lunches this week so we can pay our utility bills? You know, do we need to skip doing this so we can pay our prescriptions? All of a sudden their 4 tires go out on their car. They need to get those replaced. That's $1,500. I put that on my credit card, and after the high interest rates, now they're paying $2,000, $2,500. That just continues to snowball. So basically, we provide our resources through a multiple different paths or programs. One is our resource specialist team, which I'll let Carly speak to here in a moment. They're basically our case managers. If we don't provide the service, this team is amazing, and they know who does in our community and can help provide a warm handoff to a different community partner who can help provide some of the services that are needed. And typically, it's not just one service. So our case managers can help coordinate all the wraparound services that are needed to help keep a household stable. We also have a community cafe. It's our hot meals program. We offer breakfast Monday through Friday, 52 weeks out of the year, and then we offer lunch 365 days out of the year. So that program never closes ever. And then we also have our community market, which is our pantry program. A household can come visit that program once a week. Some do come every week. Some may only come once a month. And sometimes families will come when school's out, so they need a little extra food while their kid is at home for summer break or Christmas break. So this gives them the opportunity to have extra food in the house for their children. We also have a community closet where a family can come and visit, and we have a very large assortment of different clothing, from winter clothing to just regular clothing, adults, kids, you name it. And we've also added small household wares now too. So plates, dishes, towels, sheets, silverware, small kitchen appliances. So if someone is now moving into a place that they didn't have before, maybe they need some of those household items, they can come get those free of charge from the Our Center. And then we also offer a lot of classes. We have parenting classes, we have financial literacy classes, we have civic leadership and engagement classes. We partner with organizations where we have a digital divide class at our building. You name it, we've probably got it, or we have a partner who will come in and teach some of those life skills to help a family either move forward and better themselves in their situation, or just help them get out of a hole and start to become stable again. So that's a little bit of everything that we do. And what I like to do is just turn it over to Carly and let her talk about really what she is seeing, you know, kind of boots on the ground as a community facing staff working with our community.
So Thank you for letting me be here. I'm the lead resource specialist at the Hour Center. And so the resource specialist team is roughly, I think, 7 people right now. We take about 16 appointments a day where we are meeting with people in the community who are in need of rent, utilities. Sometimes they just need more basic needs like glasses or hearing aids, and then everything in between. We are seeing people who, lost their jobs in the beginning of the pandemic and are really struggling to get back on their feet. Just people who have unexpected health expenses or health needs that come up. And so, yeah, we're meeting with, like I said, everybody just one-on-one every day, trying to keep people housed and keep their power on.
Wow. So talk about how our community can be of support and help for you. What are if you could snap your fingers and get this resource, what would it be to help you?
That's a loaded question. Yeah, it's interesting because we during the pandemic, we saw about a 350 to 400% increase in the needs for our services. What does that look like? Carly and her team, absolutely amazing work that they've done. Before the pandemic, we would see approximately 700 vouchers. So that's basically 700 households that receive some sort of financial assistance. And that would total between $300,000 $350,000. And during the pandemic, the last 2 years, each year, they processed 17 to 1,800 vouchers. In 2020, that was $1.1 million. And in 2021, that was almost $1.4 million. So, the reason why I say it's a loaded question is money is always something that's needed, because we turn that back around to help families pay the rents, pay their mortgage, pay their utilities, keep the lights on, stay housed. And when I talk with people, I always say too, any amount is significant, whether it's $5 or $5,000. It's very important to us and is very significant, and it will help struggling households throughout the county. Other individuals, we've seen where they will donate food, they'll donate clothing, they'll donate those household items that I talked about in our community closet. Those are things that we, as quickly as they come in, the food comes in, the clothing comes in, it's almost right back out the door pretty quickly. And as we've kind of shifted now, we're shifting from pandemic to inflation crisis is kind of what I'm calling it. Not this week, but the week before, we saw 34 new individuals come to the Hour Center seeking grocery assistance from our pantry. So if that trend continues, we're going to have a very difficult time, or it'll be a challenge, I should say, for us to keep up with the food needs that the community is going to be coming to the Hour Center for. So food drives are always very valuable to us. And then if someone just wants to get more involved, volunteering. I know, a couple people on this call, as I screen through to see who are here, are volunteers for our center. And we can't do half of our mission if it's not for our volunteers. And we have one-time volunteer opportunities throughout all the programs I named earlier. We have some volunteers who will come on a regular basis once a week, and they'll volunteer for us. Sometimes it's a group activity where, a social group or a community, some sort of community group or business will want to come and serve a lunch or, help do a one-time project at our facility or even our preschool. So it can range anything from donations of food, clothing, money, to volunteering time at either our preschool or one of the programs I described before. Any and all of that is a tremendous help to our organization. And the only way we can achieve our mission is with that support from the community.
Wow. Lots of ways people can help. All right.
And have you gotten back to having volunteers in the building and back to the normal number, or is that still growing?
Yeah, so we started kind of reverse engineering, if you will, in May, June, and July of last year. We slowly opened our building back up in phases, and we fully opened up in July. We reclosed the facility for about 30 days when Omicron was spiking because we just didn't want to take the chance for staff, volunteers, or the community. But we've since reopened, and we've been reopened again for about a month. So, we'll always do everything we can to keep our services going, but at the same time, keeping the community safe at the same time. So we're back to full steam ahead, and knock on wood, we won't have to worry about closing and moving everything outdoors again.
Yes, let's hope that never happens again. We have a question from Barb. She's curious about your hours for donation.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. So basically, we'll accept them during our open hours, which is 9 to 4, Monday through Friday. And now we've also set up where we've got a volunteer. So when we're serving lunches on Saturday and Sunday, we have one volunteer who is there from 9 to noon. And if you go to our donation door, which is on the south side of our building, you ring the doorbell, he or she who's there on the weekends will come answer the door and gladly accept any donations that you bring on the weekends.
Nice. All right. Any other questions from our audience? Okay. You have Tamar, who's been your champion for 19 years of the Empty Bowls program. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Tamar or Marc?
Look at each other. Who's gonna go ahead, Tamar? I'll let you.
Yeah, I'll let you kick it off.
Okay. Well, I don't. So it's kind of unique. I think Tamar will be able to give a lot more color in between the lines a lot better than I can. So I started at the Hour Center July of 2019. And so I've never experienced a true Empty Bowls event. In 2020, when my first event was about to happen, we waited until almost the 11th hour to finally say, we've got to shut this down. We don't know what's going on with the pandemic. And it was one of the most difficult decisions, at least I've had to make in my short time. And I know it was very difficult for Tamar and Elaine, our development director, who's been with our organization for about 23 years, but it was the right thing to do. But what I've been amazed these past 2 years is just the creativity between Tamar and her team and our team to figure out how to keep some sort of semblance of Empty Bowls going, even though we still couldn't come together as a community and enjoy the event together. This year, and I apologize, I don't have the date. I'm sure Tamar probably has that. But we've set a date. It's the second Saturday of June.
June 11th.
June 11th, thank you. And we are going to do it at Flatirons Church. And again, it's still going to be a little bit of a variation of what the original event will look like, but we're just happy that we're able to bring the community back together for the first time in basically about 4 years to enjoy this event together. So I'll turn it over to Tamar, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about what the event should look like and where we hope to be in 2023 with it.
Yeah, so well, we're right in the midst of what we call at Crackpots Empty Bowls season, and it's always really fun to see people get involved and gather, and it gives us an opportunity to kind of tell people about the Hour Center, and they can have an activity and paint the bowls that they donate to the Hour Center. The bowls that people in the community paint ultimately become part of the event. So people in the community donate their bowls, and then what the event used to look like was we would have soup donated by, I'd say, about 20 different restaurants, and it was a community event that people could come. With your ticket, you would get 2 bowls of soup and just time enjoying, lots of time there was bread and dessert and everything. So it was a meal to share together, and you also got to take home a bowl that was painted by someone in the community. So yeah, it's a really fun event, and it helps raise money for the Hour Center. All the proceeds benefit the Hour Center. And we've just been super proud to be a part of it since the journey. The past few years, we've had to modify it, and I think this year will be It's a little strange because it's in June. It's usually probably this weekend. It's usually March, the second Saturday in March. But we've moved it out to June, hoping to be able to gather again and enjoy some sort of food together. I'm not sure if it's official, but it might be an ice cream social to match the June date.
I think Elaine is given into that. I think she's on board.
I don't know if I can, but yeah. And the hope is to go back to the soup because it is a nice community event and it involves so many of the restaurants in town. And that is the ultimate goal, is to go back to having the soup and sharing a meal and breaking bread like that. But yeah, we're in the midst of that right now and looking forward to seeing people in the community come together, and all the while we're telling them about the Hour Center. So
cool. So I was thrilled to have Tamar co-host this. This is the first time we've collaborated on our panel presentation, and it's nice to have another downtown business that's helping share the message with our community. So glad you're here.
Thanks.
All right. I see Andy put in the chat his donation hours, and Tiffany, if you're still available to put your donation hours for the Boulder shelter, that would be great. Hope accepts donations Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday between noon and 5. So cool. I wanted to just put in the chat if anyone is interested. These are the thermal socks that we have. Thank you. We have at Longmont Yarn Shop that we're selling for $5, and these are being spread out amongst our 4 organizations. So put the link if you want to go shop for socks. We'll make sure they get to those feet. It sounds like 1,500 socks delivered by Hope last year might need to be replenished this year. So
looks like Tiffany said that donations can come in any day before 10 a.m. and after 4:30 p.m.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I think this kind of concludes what our presentation looks like tonight. If anybody has any questions, this is last call. We still have Tiffany, Marc, Carly, and Andy here in our community. We're going to save this recording and put it, like I said, on our YouTube channel so other people can learn and spread the word. So Pamela, I didn't mean to forget you.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to say something though in way of encouragement. I got a lot of response from the fire victims, things like, you know, I may be homeless for now, but I know that's going to end. I have resources, I have means, you know, but I know now what it's like to have lost everything. And some people have said, you know, have just shifted their own thinking about homelessness as a, you know, lifestyle. What would you guys say? Because, you know, I live in Boulder. And so there's a lot of people like, why is that homeless person wearing a Patagonia? It's like, because you probably donated it, you know, but how do you dispel some of the negativity around homelessness and people who don't understand it? That's just a quick, maybe that's not a quick question, but, you know, do you know what I'm talking about? You know, I mean, is there a quick little answer you could say to?
Yeah, honestly, I think forums like this, you know, Tiffany hit on a lot of these things. And honestly, I mean, nationally, most people are within 3 paychecks of losing their housing. So I think for a lot of people, there is a reality here, and they know they're close to it. So that person wearing the Patagonia shirt, I don't know if it was a donation or it could be somebody that went through a job crisis for some reason and lost their housing because they just didn't have income. Without going into too much details, I mean, I've been pretty close to that myself many years ago. So I think for a lot of people, I'm hoping the stigma has really started to subside. But it's educational forums like this that really make a big difference.
Yeah.
And giving people a different understanding of what's going on.
I would
I would just add, I apologize that I'm not back on camera. My little one is attempting to get to sleep. It is currently in my arms, so I apologize. I would just add that no one really chooses. If you have a choice of housing or you have a choice of the street, no one is choosing the street. And so highlighting the stress and the literal shortening of life expectancy that happens is a simple way to think about it. And it's an oversimplified way, but it is just that simple. And as much as it's ironic that you used Patagonia as an example, because Patagonia does actually have a huge donation project as a company. So there are a lot of people in our community who are experiencing homelessness who walk around wearing Patagonias. And they come directly back from Patagonia. So yes, it's a nice jacket, and what a gift that is, that somebody has a little bit of warmth, whether it has a brand name on it or it doesn't. And so, yeah, I think anything that can be done to just remind people that they're also just people who've had a string of bad luck, run out of resources, and run out of relationships, and that's how you end up without a place to turn.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for what you do.
Yeah, I guess I would just add, I mean, this started off for me personally long before I had the yarn store, wanting to do something to make a difference in the community. And we started out, a small group of us, yarn bombing the geese around town and putting tags on the geese and talking about the statistics of homelessness, and sitting on the corner of 5th and Main and knitting in public with our kids, trying to raise awareness for this crisis here in our community, our beautiful little town. There's people that don't have the resources we do. So Andy came to our Girl Scout meeting when my daughter, who's now 19, was about 9, and we were making fleece hats, sewing fleece hats for the homeless, because those girls couldn't quite crank out a hat much as they'd like to. And Andy brought a guest with him who was a former client that then became a worker at the art center, and he shared his story. And Andy, if I don't get this exactly right, you can jump in, but this man was a construction worker, had a full-time job, was productively taking care of his rent and his family, and slid off a roof, broke his back. He didn't have insurance through his company, landed in the hospital, recovered, left with bills because he couldn't pay his rent, lost his home, and was now living under a bridge. So I think many people are just, like Andy said, 3 paychecks away from being homeless or without, and it's like slipping on a banana peel on a bad day. It's not something that couldn't touch many of us. So yeah, I think this is important, and I'm really glad you guys are here to learn and share, and it's reminded me that there's more that I could be doing. And I appreciate you all coming tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll look at the chat. I don't see any other questions. Carol says everyone deserves something nice. Isn't that the truth? Don't we all deserve something handmade and beautiful and warm? So, well, you guys are going to get lots of donations because they are coming in, and we'll bring them to you. And yeah.
Well, thank you, Gail, for putting this on and inviting us.
And maybe we'll be able to go back to how we used to do it, where on Friday night at Handwork, we would have guests come and talk about their mission in person. And Zoom is very useful, but it would be nice to be in person again. So someday. All right. Well, thank you all the guests that came to present, and thank you all the attendees that signed up, and Tamar for co-hosting.
Thanks for having me over.
All right, we'll call that a wrap. Appreciate you all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Marc, thank you. Yeah.